Earlier today, ALP advocates launched the 2022-2023 annual East African Community Common Market CSG scan report. Dr. Henry Honoria, who headed the initiative of ALP Advocates Scan, highlighted that it is intended to address regulatory measures by East African Community partner states in relation to commitments on free movement of capital, services and goods under Common Market Protocol adopted by Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda and South Sudan. He added that 3 freedoms of capital, services and goods have been targeted in Uganda because they are critical drivers in economy. Jocelyn Kateba, Managing Director, Crestform Limited and Uganda Manufacturers Association Board member, echoed that the private sector has been greatly involved in policy engagement to inform policies. She, however, said that the speed at which implementation is done is slow.
So I think the frustration from our side is speed. How quickly do we move? And then the second one, obviously, that keeps us up at night is enforcement. I think it's one thing to have something in writing, and then it's another thing for it to be enforced. So I guess the point here is there is engagement, there are discussions, but when it comes to actually the effect aspect, I think that's where the frustration really lies.
Emmanuel Semanda, Executive Director, African Institution of Regional Integration Studies, however, said that the private sector needs to take more initiative to litigate on issues of regional integration. He added that the private sector needs to take a step to enforce their rights and also ought to be more proactive and enforce commitments made by going to court.
I don't think that states are going to be so committed to harmonizing. I don't think that parliamentarians are going to be concerned with harmonization every day because they have so much other work to do. But the private sector needs to enforce their rights, both against themselves and against the partner states.
Andrew Rugazira, a social entrepreneur, however, mentioned that the intra-East African trade is very low and coherence with policies and economic realities is needed. He highlighted some of the changes that can be made just as countries surrounding the Mekong Valley Delta did.
Those countries got together and determined that they would create not just a policy framework, but the business environment to be the lowest cost producer of many of the manufactured goods that Europe consumes. So they built the infrastructure, they created business climate interventions, they created the incentives, and all that was needed for that region with those countries to be competitive on the global market. Now remember, Cambodia came out of a war. By the time the current President Hun Sen became leader, I think there were only 12 graduates from the university. The Kamaruja destroyed a lot of the intelligentsia. But today, Cambodia exports 8 million bicycles to the European Union because there is deliberate legal compliance, economic, political infrastructure and environment, but there is also the political will to determine to do things that are necessary to get the business going and boost these economies.
Anna Namboze, Country Director Trademark Africa, noted that the private and public sector are betrayed by government whose priorities are below expectations.
Once we handed over this NTB reporting system to government, after it had been piloted for a while, after about a year, the UCC fees are hit, and then the Ministry of Trade does not have the fees to pay the UCC, and since then the NTB reporting system has been quiet.
The Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Honorable Nobert urged citizens to demand for accountability from leaders if trade is to succeed.
The rules in Uganda are ridiculous because they actually delay business. For instance, one of the most ridiculous things is that every procurement whose value is 200 million and above requires approval from our ministry at the Attorney General's chambers. Citizens have got a duty to demand leaders who are visionaries for God and my country.